Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Hannah Waddel. I'm a PhD student at Emory University, and I'm here to moderate and get us started on our panel about statistical careers in academia. I'm really excited about this panel. We really wanted to focus on, the wide range of roles that you can find within academia and those kinds of careers and responsibilities. So the format for this panel today is we're going to briefly move through each panelist. I'll do a very brief introduction, but then each panelist will have a few minutes, 5 or so minutes to introduce themselves more fully. If you have anything to share, you can, or answer the questions of a short introduction and description of your job and your current responsibilities, or and then the path that you took to that position. Anything you want to say about that? So thank you everybody for coming, and thank you all for agreeing to be on our panel. We'll get started with Claire Kelling. She is an assistant professor of statistics at Carleton College, and she completed a dual Ph.D. in statistics and social data analytics from Penn State. Claire, I'll let you continue your introduction.
Great, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I just have a couple of slides to share. Does that show in full screen for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. So my name is Claire Kelling. I'm currently an assistant professor of statistics at Carleton College, which is a relatively small school south of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I want to tell you a little bit about my role and a little bit about some general pieces of advice that I'm sure we're going to get into in more detail, but these are sort of food for thought as we continue the conversation. So yeah, I am in a joint department of math and statistics, but my title is just assistant professor of statistics at Carleton. Carleton has about 2,000 students and about 15 to 30 stat majors per year. We do have a standalone stat major and a standalone math major, and we also have a statistics and data science minor program as well. So happy to chat about those sorts of programs if you're interested. I teach classes all throughout the curriculum. I teach sort of mid-level classes like data science and regression. Soon I will also be teaching mid-level classes like inference and probability. I teach upper-level electives like in my research area, such as spatial statistics, and I teach classes in intro stats as well. So really all over the board. And I also do a lot of independent research with students. So Carleton College is an undergraduate only institution, but I still am very active in doing research with students. At any given term, I have somewhere between usually 3 and 10 students doing research with me. So yeah, that's been really fun to do. One of the things as part of my role is to advise group theses, which is a structure that every single student at Carleton has to do. Senior theses are not like an honors option at Carleton. Every single student does a senior thesis. So that's been a really fun part of my job as well. I also do a lot of work with community partners, which I think is something particularly that I feel that I have the space to do at a small liberal arts college. So if y'all are interested, I'm happy to talk about my work with my community partner in Minneapolis. And I do a lot of research on spatial statistics. So my research is mostly motivated at if I have point level data sets, then we shouldn't aggregate them. So this is just one slide that shows that if you aggregate point level data sets, such as calls for service in Arlington County, Virginia, you can lead to all sorts of misleading, both visual and statistical conclusions. And I do a lot of research with students working on how do we visualize data, how do we model data that is spatial and has these sort of complex structures to them. So just briefly to get into a couple of the things that you might want to talk about in more detail, I'm happy to talk about support resources. In particular, I've learned a lot about time management in my first couple years as a faculty member. I'm only in my second year, just wrapping up my second year as a faculty member, so happy to talk about that. I have lots of opinions on forming community with other faculty, such as through new faculty writing groups that I'm happy to talk about. There are lots of existing programs and workshops across the country, like the Faculty Success Program and the Preparing to Teach workshop that might be beneficial. And yeah, I've learned a lot about the tenure process. This is a tenure track position that I'm in, and happy to talk about what that looks like in a small liberal arts college as well. And then, yeah, happy to also talk about the small liberal arts college process, application process as well. I just have sort of a brief bullet point list here that be happy to expand on in more detail if you have questions later. And I think that's about probably 5 minutes. So I'll just leave this as food for thought, and I'm happy to go into more detail when we come back around for questions.
Some great, thank you, Claire. Our next panelist is Linjun Zhang. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Statistics at Rutgers University and received his PhD in statistics at the University of Pennsylvania.
Hi everyone. Can you see my slides?
Yes, they're not full screen yet.
Okay, yeah, let me make it full screen. It is good.
Yes, we can see. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, so let me briefly introduce myself first. So my name is Linjun. I got my PhD from the Wharton School at UPenn in 2019. And then I became an assistant professor of statistics at Rutgers. Recently, I got an early promotion and will be associate professor next month. And in terms of my research, I have been working on the intersection between deep learning theory and statistical theory. So during my PhD, I have been working on like high-dimensional statistical inference, including classification, regression, and matrix factorization. But gradually, when I become a faculty, I get interested in like those machine learning and deep learning stuff. So I'm still learning statistical tools, but I'm now mostly focused on like trying to apply those statistical tools to those machine learning models and try to propose, say, new algorithms to guarantee AI safety, especially nowadays in language models, including data privacy and algorithmic fairness. So yeah, this is a very quick introduction of myself. In the next few slides, I will mainly share my general advice, say how to what to do, say to become maybe good faculty. Okay, so the first tip I want to share as a PhD student is possibly we need to develop a good research taste. So let me show you an example. I just want to remark that we are now in the age of paper inflation. So NeurIPS is a major machine learning conference, one of the major machine learning conference, and it has deadline next week. Okay, but the abstract deadline was May 15th, around 2 or 3 days ago. And people have found that there are more than around 22,000 submissions simply for this single conference. And because the acceptance rate is around 20%, so you can calculate yourself that there will be 4,000 papers at least this year simply for NeurIPS. So I think as you grow older and older, you will realize that most of your colleagues and even students will have many papers upon graduation. But you will then realize what makes people remember you, recognize you, is only a few papers, very few papers. So in my opinion, to be a good PhD student, okay, you should train yourself identifying those important research questions instead of simply publishing papers. So especially say during your PhD career, okay, when your advisor is around, okay, I would suggest you to come up with say new research questions from time to time independently, and then ask your advisor to judge if this research problem is important or not. Okay, so in this way you can train yourself of identifying important research questions. Then in terms of say how to identify important research questions, I would say it's a balance between your own skills, your technical skills, your own interest. Say if you are interested in, for example, theoretical statistics, probability, or say biostats or like medical research, more applications. Moreover, you need also to take into account say other people's interest because you need to make other people appreciate your research. Okay, so you should balance between those three components when you try to identify research questions. And more importantly, you should talk to more people, including your advisor, your cohort. And also you should go to conferences and talk with more people and should know say what other people care about. Then a very I will go very quickly about say the application process when you go to the job market after you graduate. So the first thing you need to prepare during the faculty application process is the materials. And I'm in the search committee this year to hire recruit both junior and senior faculties in my department this year. And one of my experience is if you look at all the materials, application materials from hundreds of applicants, there are actually some patterns, consistent patterns among all those materials. So one thing you need to do is you should learn the patterns. And to learn the patterns, you need to collect more training samples. So when you prepare for those materials, don't be shy to ask either from your advisor or your friends. Okay, so as I mentioned, you should talk with more people during conferences, right? So here, when you make friends, you should ask. So when you go to market or when you apply for those jobs, could you please send me, say, your cover letter, your CV, your research statement, etc. Okay, you should try to learn from those and write your own. And secondly, my second tip during the interview process is you should come up with a few, just several tags for yourself. For example, for me, I will come up with like privacy, fairness, machine learning as my research tag, and also possibly like friendly as my personality tag during the interview. Because typically our search committee will meet after all the candidates have the interviews. And typically we will easily forget, say, what you are after a few weeks. So it's good to say you leave them those impressions with those simple tags. Then after a few weeks, we will still remember you and we will give those tags to you. So during, say, basically all the events during the interview, including the research talk and the one-on-one talk with faculties, you should try to show those tags to them, highlight those tags so that we will remember you during our discussion. The last tip I want to make is that nowadays, because if you listen to this talk, you will realize you are in a very good major. Okay, statistics is now a very attractive major, and you will have a lot of choices upon graduation. So you can either go to academia or industry. But I just want to mention that this is not a binary choice. Okay, for me, an ideal status is say you go to academia, but you remain good relationship with the industry. I think, in my opinion, nowadays the most of the like changing developments will be developed by the industry. For example, ChatGPT, right? So all those changing powers now will require a lot of computational resources and a lot of human resources. Okay, and only those like tech companies are able to provide those huge resources to you. So possibly you should keep in mind, say, to collaborate more with those industry partners, especially those people from research lab. Okay, so on one hand, you will know, say, what's the technology bottleneck at this moment. Okay, and then you will have a focus on your research. And on the other hand, you can also gain, say, those computational resources from this industry collaboration. Okay, so maybe I talk too much. All right, yeah, thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Linjun. That was great. Our next panelist is Joyce Fu. She is an assistant professor of teaching in the Department of Statistics at University of California, Riverside. And she also earned her Ph.D. in statistics at UC Riverside.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen. So I just prepared a brief slide to introduce, kind of explain like my career path. I'm currently a teaching position. I'm sure how many of our audience are interested in the teaching position. So I got into this position kind of by chance because as most of the PhD stats PhD, when I was study, I think okay, I'll just finish my degree and then I'll go to industry, find a job. And so that's what I did. So in my PhD study, I was doing anomaly detection, quality control. Well, when I got a job in industry, it's not something that's really related to my dissertation. But it's a quite interesting experience. I work in a small startup company that they're doing business analytics. So we can, well, luckily I have access to cookie level, so big consumer data. So I can play with, but nowadays it's not quite big, but at that time, I think it's big enough for me to have fun and then enjoy, the data mining pleasure. Okay, so I really experienced that what does data mining mean when you have the real data, you're trying to find information from it and find useful information and you can sell it to your client. That's really interesting. And well, for family reason, I kind of stopped the job at 2016. And then one of my friends introduced me to say, hey, here's a lighter position, lighter job for you, like teaching in the university compared to working in a small startup. So I started to teach in NYU Shanghai, actually in computer science department because there they don't have a statistics department. So I was teaching data science and a little bit of programming, and intro to computer science. And then when I say okay, I need to go back to the U.S., I luckily get a position from UC Riverside, and there I'm teaching. So as the teaching professor, so it's still a tenure track position, but it requires more teaching and less research. But and you can do research in either pedagogical research or the methodology research. So you can choose. So and also, I think this position is quite different from what I expected. So if you're interested, we can talk more about this. Well, first you need to teach. You need to teach large classes. Like every quarter, while we're in a quarter system, every quarter I have about 400 to 500 students to teach, and then beyond that, I also have to do research and then a lot of service activities. So it's kind of fun, but I think the good thing is there's a lot of learning opportunities for me to continue to grow in this position, other than a simple lecture position that you just teach almost the same course repeatedly. Yeah, so that's kind of a brief description of my position here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Joyce. Our next panelist is Maria Montez-Rath. She is a senior biostatistician and director of the Biostatistics core of the Division of Nephrology at Stanford University, and completed her Ph.D. in biostatistics from Boston University.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. Let me just share my slides. I think I want this one. Can you all hear me? Yeah, great.
We can see your slides.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm currently at Stanford, and I'm the director of the Biostatistics core within the Division of Nephrology, and that's we do kidney-related research. I see my job as being the person that it's the intermediary between the theoretical statisticians and the medical doctors I need to work with. Someone has to translate the language. And so that is that is one of my jobs as a statistician working with medical researchers. So as I like thinking about this and I was going through preparing my slides, I said, actually, if I just show you my career path, I can talk a lot about what you can do at different stages, even as you are a student. So I completed my BS in computer-oriented mathematics in 1999 at UMass. And during that period, I really realized, I love math. I like statistics. Well, I love math, but it's too theoretical for me, even though I like the programming part of it too. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to try a master's in statistics because I think statistics, you are supposed to work with people more. So that's what I did. And in 2001, I graduated with a master's in statistics at UMass. And at the time, I was just like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do. But already as a master statistician, there's lots of jobs out there. So I got a job as a master's level programmer at BU with an appointment at the local, one of the local VAs in the Boston area. And so basically that's what I did pretty much until 2008. But at this time, so basically in 2003, my supervisor, which was a researcher, and the senior statistician I worked with convinced me to go for my PhD in biostatistics because they said I just had too many questions that I needed to answer. And so the best way is just go get your PhD. So since I was an employee of Boston University, one of the benefits that we got was tuition remission. So I worked full time and did my coursework for my PhD, which I do not recommend to anyone. But it was, it was a decision I had to make at the time because living in Boston is not cheap either. And so basically that allowed me to save some money so that I could pay my rent when I went part-time and work on my thesis. And so that's why also my PhD took a little bit longer than usual. But finally, I did that and I finished my PhD in 2008. And at that point, I was already in my 30s and I said, okay, I can't wait any longer. And so I have a gap here that you can see here where I basically left the statistical world and had my two daughters, which you see here just last year, a couple of years ago. So they're grown now, but and in high school. But it was, I'm really happy I did that because I could really focus with them. But at some point, I really needed statistics back in my life. I just couldn't just handle being at home with them. And so I started at Stanford, basically. Someone, like my advisor knew someone at the Division of Nephrology who were looking for someone to work part-time to help them with a project. And so I got hired as a contract statistician at the time, which allowed me to work part-time while the girls were still small and growing up. And, so eventually I actually started working 10 hours a week. And then I went up as they got older. And then finally in 2014, I got a full staff employment as a research engineer. And then in 2016, I became a senior research engineer and also the director of Biostats Core. Because what happened was I started so I was the first biostatistician within the division, starting 10 hours a week. By the time I became a research engineer, we already had two other master level statisticians working with us. So they really saw the power of having statisticians within the division and how much we can contribute to their science and the research that they were doing. And so with that, then we end up hiring more people. And right now we are a group of 7 people, which is amazing. You do not find this in many places, to have just one division, to have 7 statisticians working for them. But that's how much they treasure us. Like, they really appreciate what we can bring into the research that they make, that they develop. And so, this is basically my path, but you can see, like, you can be a master's level programmer, statistician, or you can be a PhD statistician, or you can be a director. So there's, I think for me is really to just, you need to follow your hearts, see what is it that you really, really like. And then find a way of, putting a path. I knew for myself that I love working with people. So the thought of, for me, of becoming faculty meant that I needed to work by myself quite a lot. And I did not want that. I did not want to be one of those people that is just in my closed office, developing methods that might or might not be applied in real life. And so that's why I chose my path. Let's see, this one. So this is, I just wanted to briefly tell you, like, the biostatistician staff positions at Stanford. There's 3 right now. We are trying to convince HR that we need to enlarge the numbers, because people like being promoted, and it takes a very long time to go from one position to the next, because as you can see, even though you do not have to read all of this, and I'm happy to share my slides if anyone wants to, but you can see is that what is required of you just increases a lot. So to go from a biostatistician 2 to 3, it takes at least 5 years, which would be the time that would take you to go from a master's to a PhD. So then the question is really, like, so you can go from 2 to 3 if you get a master's degree, and then you need to have at least 5 years of experience in order to become a biostatistician 3. But I would say that even with 5 years, it's going to be really hard to get a biostatistician 3 position, unless you have really very specific experience before. So you're more likely and potentially better off starting as a biostatistician 2. And for this, what I recommend is that if you think that you really enjoy working with people, that you would like a career in medical research or clinical research, then try to find, while you're doing your master's, try to find projects that you can work with. So you start getting a feeling of how people actually work and do these things. And that will really help you so that when you graduate, even if you go into your PhD, to have real experience that is really hard to get while you are studying. So my recommendations are, I would say, like, networking is extremely important. So I would say join the ASA, join any sections that are relevant to your work or to what you think you would want to do. Join your local ASA chapter and university chapter. If there isn't a university chapter where you are, then start one, right? This will give you amazing experience of figuring out how this stuff works out there. And we are all volunteers, so we, like, a lot of the things that we do, we do them as volunteers to the others. And you can just learn a lot from doing these things. So don't be shy. I was actually very shy when I was doing, especially at the end of my master's degree, but I forced myself to still go to conferences and try to talk to people, even though it's exhausting to do that, but you just have to do it. take advantages of lectures, webinars, and start building your network. If you have a question during a webinar, don't be afraid of asking. I really find that we rarely have stupid questions. There's no such a thing. Most of the time, if you have a simple question that you need to ask, the problem is not that you do not know. The problem is that the person that is talking and giving the lecture or the talk did not do a good job explaining it, okay? So don't ever feel like you can't ask a question. You should always ask a question. Apply to student awards to get a stipend to attend GSM and other meetings. You don't have anything to lose. The worst that happens is that you don't get selected. Then at least you practice writing a paper, right? And you submitted it, and you can do it again at a later time. But you really don't have anything to lose. So if you have some work that you have already been doing, really go ahead and apply to the student awards. That's why they are there. And most sections of the ASA have student awards. So apply to more than one. Sometimes, they fit in more than one section. If you want to become a collaborator biostatistician, so this is someone who works with researchers, and we call ourselves collaborators for a reason. There's also, a lot of people, we would actually be called consultants, right? Because you talk with, people come to you with a project, with an idea, and then they typically just want you to crunch the numbers, right? And that, as already, doesn't work that way, right? Your analysis is going to be as good as the data that you get. So if they go ahead and collect data that is not good because they did not speak with a statistician early enough, then it doesn't matter that you can apply these super sophisticated and awesome methods because the data is not there. So in order to do that, is you have to really collaborate with people, get their confidence that they can work with you, they can ask the questions. And so at the end, you end up being not the person who just crunches the numbers and applies methods, but a real collaborator, someone that they will come to you and say oh, Maria, I have this question. How would we go about designing a study to answer this question? And when you start having those conversations, then you have done your job. Okay, you are in a good position because now people really trust you to help them actually design the study. And there's a lot of reward that comes from that, because it's not just applying the methods, is actually answering questions that can be really meaningful to helping people. So if that's something that you are interested in, this is a great place to be. And there's lots of jobs. There's a huge need for good master level statisticians with good programming skills, but that also have the statistical and epidemiological background to really understand and help the researcher develop a question and a project. So if you are in your PhD or even master's levels, and in your college, they actually have classes to teach you how to collaborate, how to consult, and how to run projects with others. If this is something that you want, you should definitely take an opportunity of that, because when I graduated, it didn't exist. And so then you come to the job, and now suddenly nobody taught you how you can have hard conversations. How can you actually tell the researcher that comes to you with this data and tell him, I know you spent 2 years collecting all this data, but now I can't do anything with it. I'm sorry, right? So how do you actually have this and you say this? It's something that you're going to have to learn on the job. So if you can learn it in class time with your PhD, it will just make your life easier. So one of the sections that I'm part of, and I volunteer for, is the statistical consulting section. And this is one of the sections at the ASA where people actually are really involved. There's always questions being asked. People really communicate, and we're really a community. not just in the US, but abroad too. So we have a lot of members, international members that are part of the consulting section. And we just like, sometimes the questions are statistical, other times the questions are how you handle a situation with a researcher, you know, so you can really get the help of people that have more experience or who have gone through this. And then there's also this, we're just creating a quantitative staff network. This is national network for staff statisticians. And to try and help, because as staff, what we see is that like a lot of people are very shy, and it's hard for them to really try to develop and grow in their careers. And so we're trying to bring together all the staff within the US so that we can all help each other figuring out like how can you advocate for yourself even after you graduate. So I have all of these have links on it, so I'm happy to share my slides. Just like you can just contact me, and yeah, and these are my recommendations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. Our final panelist is Sadie Mirzaei. She's an assistant member at the Biostatistics Department of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and received her Ph.D. in statistics from the Indian Statistical Institute in Kolkata. You can see your slides okay, Sadie. We can't hear you. Yeah, looks like you're unmuted, but audio is not coming through.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry for that. I'm going to share my slide again. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hannah, for the nice introduction. My name is Sedigheh Mirzaei, known as Sadie. I'm an assistant member at the Department of Biostatistics at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I'm also excited to share that I got promoted to an associate member, and I'll be an associate member from August 2024. I talk about my journey in a different way. I did my bachelor and master in statistics at Isfahan University of Technology in Iran. Then I got admission, PhD admission at Indian Statistical Institute in India, Kolkata, India. And then in applied statistics, and there it was the place that I felt like I am interested in real data. I want that challenge. So even though all my training was in mathematical statistics, I decided to apply for postdoc position in biostatistics department. And one day I had 2 interviews in 2 different biostat departments. One was at biostatistics bioinformatics branch of NICHD at NIH, and another one was Duke and US Medical Center in Singapore. The latter one offered me the position next day, and that was the reason I moved to Singapore. In a few months, I got a good news from NIH, and they offered me a postdoc position at NIH. and it was the opportunity I couldn't say no. So I resigned here, even though it was a few months, but I got a very good experience here, learning a smart design, different clinical trial. But then I moved to NIH in Maryland. That was the place which really taught me a lot. And I should thank Dr. Sundram, my mentor at NIH, because there she gave me the opportunity to collaborate with researchers, especially epidemiology department. And then I learned how to have a collaborative research. What can I bring to the table when I am a biostatistician? Others bring their problem, and the biostatistician will bring some solution by designing some study, giving a new method. And that was the place which I learned a lot. Right after 1.5 years, in September 2018, I got a tenure track assistant member position at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, the place I am right now. I know you all have different definition of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, but basically this hospital was founded by Dr. Danny Thomas in 1962 with the mission of no child should die in the dawn of life. And this means we need to have the best cure for pediatric cancer. Since then, St. Jude grew a lot. And now we have 22 scientific departments with more than 50 scientific divisions. The division I am a member is Cancer Control and Survivorship Program or division. And the reason it is an important division is because more than 85% of children with pediatric cancer, they achieve 5 years survival. And that leads to more than 500,000 survivors in the United States at this moment. So what is important about them is, of course, they achieve the survivorship. They just could come out the cancer, but basically they are kids. They have a long life ahead of them. And unfortunately, they are at risk of developing a different long-term morbidity. There are literature which shows, unfortunately, by the age of 50, about 100% of these childhood cancer survivors have kind of condition, chronic health condition. It could be a simple one, a grade 1, 2, 3, but it could be a severe one. So these people are important for us, and we need to study them to offer them a better life. Me as a biostatistician needs to bring some biostatistical methodology research. And especially for my interest, I'm focusing on developing innovative method which can be helpful in survivorship research. Of course, I am part of biostatistics department, and this department has a mission which is in line with St. Jude mission. But the vision we have, we want to be a lead biostatistician in pediatric cancer, because we believe St. Jude is leading the cure for pediatric cancer, and we want to be a biostatistical leader in pediatric cancer. Of course, we are giving all the biostatistical support with different groups. I mean, either it is during the treatment or after surviving, or other researchers who are collaborating with St. Jude. Our department is a big one. We are about 90 people, including faculties, staff biostatistician. Our staff are either master or Ph.D., but they are directly collaborating with physicians and other oncologists, cardiologists, and whoever else who has a scientific research problem. We have postdoctoral fellows and, of course, computational personnel and admin staff. I have an exciting news also to share. I know it may not be useful for you, but I'm telling to spread the news. We have a data science master program coming in fall 2025, and that is an exciting one. Not only a student have access to all the research lab, they are getting full stipend. So with that, I would like to thank you, and I'm ready to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you to all our panelists. Yeah, we've got a lot of very good information. Looking forward to this. So with our remaining time, we have time for a few questions. If anybody from the audience would like to ask a question, you can use the Q&A or unmute yourself if you're able. And while those come in, I actually do have my own question because I'm coming up on the end of my PhD, looking at jobs. I am looking at kind of more of these academia positions, and something about academia, the kind of the flexibility and like that kind of self-directedness seems great, but I'm also very nervous about that, like that first day of work. So just wondering about your experiences getting started, finding those good collaborations that you have and that you work with, and just want to hear more about, like hitting the ground running in an academic job.
I can go first if that's okay. So I would say even with a PhD, joining a group, whether it be like mine or like Sadie's, right? Or like a group where you're going to have mentors. Also, there are actual statisticians. That would make your life a lot easier, because then like you will get help from someone that is already in the field. There are lots of opportunities like that, like out there where a lot of people are looking for statisticians. And so you will find a lot of jobs where you would be the sole statistician working within a group. And if you do end up in a situation like that, then I really recommend that you join like the statistical consulting section or the staff network, because and then find a mentor, someone from the outside that is a statistician, because in a lot of places then, like my supervisor, right, is the head of the division. She's a doctor. She has no clue what I need to keep on developing as a statistician, right? So I needed to find someone at Stanford that basically became my mentor and helped me. So even though the first year is really hard, and I agree, but just really look for people that you can work with, and they will be the ones, like, especially if at the same institution, they are the ones that can really support you. And if it doesn't seem like you can find one within the institution that you end up with, go outside, text all of us, get in touch with the people that are here and ask them. Like I'm always free to help, like to support people, because it's such a hard job. We are not taught about how to collaborate in school. And so really, I think, it's one of my jobs I see as helping people go through that. And then in terms of finding the good collaborations, it's a lot of work and takes time. So be patient. For example, within my division, I had some work where I needed to work with basic scientists. They were not used to working with statisticians, but I could see that they could benefit from our help, not just when they needed, but ahead of time as they even were designing the studies. And it took me a good 3 years. Every time they came to me, I always said yes. And then I built that friendship with them. And then it got to the point where now they are thinking of writing a grant. And before they even start working on their aims page, they come to me. Maria, I have this question. What do you think I should be doing? What are the focus? Like, what are the things that you think as are extremely necessary? You know, it took me like, I would say 3 to 5 years to get there. So just be patient and really invest your time with the people that you feel like you can work with. Because there will always be people that will come to you asking for a power calculation. And if that's all they want, provide the power calculation, but not more than that. And then let it go and give more to the people that you think you would like to work with, that they are doing the research that you would like to be involved in, you know, and then you might go above and beyond what they're even asking you, because you really would like to nurture that relationship so that you can be a collaborator and become a co-investigator on a grant with them later on.
Thank you.
And I might go next. Yeah, I agree with Maria. It's 100% the same way. First of all, it is not really scary. You always have a mentor. No matter how senior you are at a job, you always have a mentor, unless if you are like really a professor and then you don't need any mentor, but you always have a mentor. The mentor could be one of the senior biostatistician, a faculty member, or some of the like physician who are maybe in that field. So that's answer to, okay, you always have a mentor, a support. And for building a collaboration team, it is always, I mean, difficult in the beginning, but as soon as you build your collaboration and the research interest, then people are coming to you. Others need your expertise because data is always difficult to interpret. So they have data, they have the information, they cannot interpret. They cannot analyze and get the results they need. So I believe the first part is easy because you have a good mentor. But the second part is you just see your interest, and based on your interest, you build your collaboration team. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if any other panelists want to answer, we also have a question that came in through the chat that I can ask. So this one question from Thomas asking how to determine the teaching and research balance if teaching is required that works for you, works for your position.
Yeah, maybe I can take a first go at that. And Hannah, I think you just mentioned something that is a pretty, I don't know what question is it? Is it works for you or works for your position? Because those two things might not be the same.
Yeah, question is works for you. I also added works for your position because I know that can be a consideration in some like tenure track positions as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say the thing that comes to mind first is trying to make works for you and works for your position align, right? I think sometimes you maybe want to focus a little bit more on research or a little bit more on teaching than what the position is requiring of you and how you're being evaluated. So I would try, my first piece of advice is to figure out what the tenure expectations are if it is a tenure track position, and try to align your balance of teaching and research to the balance that is required by the position as much as you can. And some of the ways I've seen that happen is, for example, carving out a limited amount of time each day to work on teaching, for example, so that it doesn't sort of take over your whole life. In my experience from a lot of the folks that I've seen, especially in the first couple years of being on the tenure track and teaching new classes, as much time as you give to teaching, it will take up that time. So I've heard some advice from lots of different folks on the tenure track to really try to find a way to keep that time in designated spots and try not to let it bleed over into other time. But yeah, I really think that aligning those two things, working for you and working for your position, is a really important piece of this.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yeah, I also want to add, I think I agree with Claire. I think you need to talk to your department, either chair or whoever is in charge of, evaluation, or sorry, hiring. So in my department, when we're hiring the research track faculty, we know internally we're allowed to give some teaching release in the first year. So if you can do a good negotiation, you can get a lot of teaching release, get the maximum amount teaching release. So you don't have to worry about teaching that much. And also don't worry about teaching too much in the first year, because at least in my department, we all know that if this is the first or second time you teach a course, it won't be easy for you. You will spend a lot of time on it. And especially if it's a new course, then sometimes our department consider that's a 2-course load because you have to design everything. And if someone already taught that course before, you can just ask for, previous course material. I mean, however much they like to share. So it will save you some time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Possibly I can also share some of my experience as a research track assistant professor. So in our department, we are required to teach 1 class every semester. So for my experience, I try to separate the time spent on teaching and research as much as possible. So my strategy is, so typically I teach on Mondays, so I will leave the whole Monday as the teaching day. So I will say put my office hours on that day. I will also prepare the slides for the next week on that day. Yeah, and also I will say like grade, and so sometimes I need to grade the final reports even if I have TA. That just I put everything on a single day, and then for the rest of the week I spend my time on research. So that's my strategy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Thank you. All right. So yeah, keeping an eye on the any questions that come in. We are kind of coming up to the end of our time, so probably perhaps we don't want to get too far into any questions. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We'll start to wrap up. If you're interested in talking further with any of the panelists, I encourage you to reach out. Would LinkedIn be a good option for all of you, something like that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming, everybody, today. Our conference will begin again tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody then. Yeah, thank you. Give one more thank you to all our panelists, and thank you everybody for coming today. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you for organizing.
Bye.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.